was a big fan of stand-up, you know, as a teenager, kind of growing up, and then I really leaned more towards the writing.
Yeah.
You know, I thought like, I think I want to write. I think I want to write comedy, and that kind of started in high school and even through college, and then my sophomore year in college, I started doing stand-up. You know, after years of writing in notebooks and. You know, I mean, I still have my high school, my comedy notebook from when I was like 15, and it's terrible. It's the worst thing ever, but it kind of, I look back at it and I go like, thank God I didn't start then. You know, like, thank God I didn't start when I kind of knew nothing. And then I did like I interned at Conan for a summer, which really just gave me a summer in New York, and I went around all these bars and watched kind of bar shows, essentially. And I wouldn't say it was inspired or like I saw anyone and was like, I want to do that, but I did see a lot of stuff I knew I didn't want to do, and, you know, kind of figured out, like, just really, like, simple elements of, like, oh, that's considered hacky, like, stuff that you wouldn't know kind of outside that community, and then got back to LA and started, you know, just opened a newspaper and started going to open mics, like coffee houses. And, I don't know, I think I seemed more uncomfortable when I first started. I mean, my comfort level on stage is always, you know, it's always sort of I don't want to say it's sort of false, but I'm always nervous, you know, usually, before I go on stage I'm usually nervous, and it's funny to hear people say, like, you know, they tell me I look relaxed, but I don't know, when I started I was just really going on stage and reading jokes I'd written, you know, reading down these sort of absurd thoughts that I had that, you know, didn't really have a place anywhere else, you know, it's certainly not in conversation or something, so like, it was like going on stage and looking at a piece of paper and saying, oh, these are 5 things I wrote down today, and like, when I really was doing open mics when I first started, and I kind of wish I had that now, I'm trying to get back into it, it's like, I would literally every night would be something new, you know, just 5 things I thought of that day, stuff I thought of in the car on the way there, and it's a little harder to do that now in like bigger rooms, you know, try to test stuff out like that, but I didn't have a flow really, you know, I mean, I didn't, I don't know, there was no fluidity what I was doing, like I just was reading, and now I'm not much more high energy than I was when I started, but I think there's an apparent, I hope there's like, you know, an apparent comfort level that wasn't there before. But at the same time, it's all pretty much, you know, people like, the deadpan stuff is not really an affect. I'm not trying to do anything other than just say this is something I thought of that was funny. So, I don't usually do crowd work. I mean, there's usually, it really depends on the room, you know, like these sort of more, I guess what they call alternative rooms in LA, which is just a, you know, easy label to use, even though it's not necessarily fair, but they're much more interested, they're much more patient and sort of interested in hearing the jokes, and they like the jokes, and like, they're like, you know, most of the time, like the jokes I'll do out here, you know, they'll not bomb, but they won't do as well as, you know, sort of the interaction with the audience, and that's just, I don't feel like I'm, you know, sort of compromising necessarily. Well, I guess I am. I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think, because I kind of, sometimes I get embarrassed when I get off stage. I go, oh, I said a couple things that aren't necessarily me, but I know that I was sort of pandering a little bit and, you know, wanted to get the crowd riled up. But I feel like that's kind of part of my responsibility as like a middle act when I'm in front of people, because I don't want to necessarily do everything that I want to do and then leave you know, if I know the crowd's not going to be into it, and leave them flat for the headliner. Yeah. You know, so if people are like coming out to see me, or if I'm doing, you know, some shows in LA where people really like that kind of comedy, I won't talk to the crowd at all, pretty much. But you know, if it's a kind of more of a mainstream club, it just I think it helps kind of, you know, you know, greases the wheels a little bit, and you seem more accessible when you are doing your jokes, even if it's jokes that you know they don't like. They didn't like the ROR joke. They usually, the irony joke, you know, usually never goes over. So it's kind of like, here's something for you, here's something for me. I don't think so. I think the first time you start saying stuff that's sort of dark or blue, and you're a girl on stage, I think people are shocked, much more so, like shocked in a sort of a silent way, as opposed to, you know, laughing out loud, just sort of like, oh my god, like, people, I don't know. I mean, Scott, who's on stage right now, like he's pretty shocking, and like I don't know. I feel like it is kind of easier for men because it's more accepted,
Yeah.
you know. But you have to sort of win people over. I mean, yeah, it's weird. I still feel like I'm not really, that stuff's not really, doesn't go over that well with the crowd, the darker stuff, and it's more about, I don't know if it'll change, it depends on the room, but a lot of times with clubs, like regular clubs, you do the stuff that's dark, they sort of go like, and then you laugh to yourself, you know, which is still enjoyable, so.
If you go on stage and you have some darker stuff and you kind of sense that maybe that they won't get it or won't like it, do you hold back or do you still?
I wish I could say I don't hold back. You know, I mean, I hope in like 5 years, if you ask me that question, I'll say I'd never hold back and I do everything I want to do. But I definitely hold back now. You know, to an extent. You know, I mean, I'll hold back more with jokes I think they won't understand, as opposed to jokes I think will offend them. Because I'd rather seem, I guess I'd rather seem dirty than sort of condescending, I guess. I'd rather like laugh at a joke that doesn't go well because people were offended, rather than like explain a joke to, you know, I don't want to like explain a joke to an audience. Like, even if they don't get it, it's not somebody's fault for not getting the joke. It's just, you know, it's just the way it is. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. All that stuff is hard for me because I still am in a place where I'm trying, you know, like I said, especially middling, where I'm trying to just do my job, and you know, when I'm out, like you know, the Comedians of Comedy tour is like, it's a totally different experience than featuring in a club, and I try to kind of go with the tide a little bit while still being myself, but there are definitely, you know, I said the word compromise before, but there's definitely, you know, some compromise, I would say. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, most of the crowd, some of them, you know, are tough. You know, it's kind of like comics say a lot, like, oh, was that, you know, how was the crowd? You're like, oh, it was work. Like, when it's work, it's funny because it is a job. It's like, God forbid you have to work at something, but there's a difference between like a crowd that is just with you the whole time and a crowd you have to work for. And some of the crowds you have to work for, but they're all pretty good. They know what they're going out to see, as opposed to like people just saying, hey, let's go to a comedy club Friday night. Doesn't matter who's on the bill, doesn't matter, they're not there to see someone in particular. I mean, with the bigger names, of course they are, but, you know, even then, people are like, hey, let's check that out, it seems like a fun thing to do, so they don't know what they're expecting, and you kind of, you know, I know that I get uncomfortable, like, you know, I should do more mainstream clubs, but, you know, I'm trying to do more just for that very reason, that I don't want to walk into a room and be like, oh, they're going to hate me, they're going to, you know, I think you can, you know, you can work with any crowd. It's like with doing all that crowd work, I've been doing that the last few nights, and it works. It's not me being totally me, but, you know, they're having a good time, and, you know, the headliner doesn't want to kill me, so.
Do you prefer a room that's there to see you, or maybe one that you have to win over? Do you prefer?
I like a room that's there to see me. You know, I would say, you know, one of the most, I guess one of the more prominent reasons I try to do clubs, or have been trying to do more since I've had, you know, since I've had the time to do them, is to get the, you know, the 25-30 minute sets in. You know, if you're down in LA or even in New York, you end up doing these smaller rooms that are really great and get amazing crowds, you know, my favorite crowds, but at the same time, you're often limited to like a 10-minute set, you know, maybe a 15-minute set, sometimes a 7-minute set, and, you know, to get the longer sets in, you gotta go out on the road, and, you know, it's worth it for me, sort of the exchange, you know, they're not gonna sort of, you know, I don't like me as much, but at the same time, I get to work out my sort of, I don't know, narcissistic need to be on stage for 30 minutes.